My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. It was like the same thing. All my family had suddenly gone, and I wasn't talking to them again. And this was something that happened to me when I was a kid, and it's the same thing, just in a different environment. Most days I came home from work and doom scroll until God knows when, and then that was my entire life. This job was literally putting my life in peril. I might genuinely die if I continue working in this job.
That was British expat Ben Reeves. In 2025, a health scare pushed him over the edge, and he finally walked away from the job he'd invested in for over a decade. Why is it so hard to let go of a job even when you know it's destroying your well-being? Welcome to the X Perspective podcast. I'm your host, Raj, and this is episode 21. Most of us, I imagine, have been in a situation where we feel stuck or unfulfilled in our jobs, and yet we still talk ourselves out of leaving. It can feel like there are no other options. 38-year-old Ben Reeves felt the same way until he was forced to confront a fear even greater than the fear of quitting. His story is a powerful one. It explores what happens when you invest so much of yourself into your work and how the drive to achieve your goals and even low self-esteem can lead you to ignore the warning signs. Before we get into it, I want you to ask yourself, what would it take for you to walk away from a job that leaves you feeling unfulfilled? Now, come with me and step into Ben's perspective. What it felt like to be stuck, and just as importantly, what it felt like to finally let go. Why did you choose to live in Thailand instead of England?
I didn't explicitly choose Thailand so much as I wanted to be an expat. My dad moved to Thailand in 1997, and I came out to visit him the first time in 1998, when I would have been 11 years old. And I saw the life he was living, and I thought, this is awesome. It was such an adventure to be in a completely different culture to the one I grew up in. It seemed much more exciting and much more, I think adventure is the right word for it. It just seemed more of an adventure in life than just sat in a small, quiet little village in Yorkshire.
So you knew from a young age that you wanted to be an expat.
Absolutely.
Also, you told me earlier that when you were a teenager, around 15 years old, you started to have a passion and a desire, some interest towards journalism. And you did end up getting a degree in journalism.
Correct, yes.
Can you tell my listeners, what is it about journalism that you really enjoy?
Storytelling. I absolutely love listening to people talk about something they're passionate about because that passion is infectious. And then I love writing that down, basically. I love finding a creative way to express that is interesting and exciting to read.
In 2014, this is like 2 years after you've been in Thailand, you worked some journalism job where you were the editor of a magazine.
Correct.
As well as you did some news for radio. So you got some journalism experience under your belt.
I also had 2 years before I moved to Thailand, where I lived in Oman, where I was a full-time journalist.
Right. You had that experience, and then you eventually got to Thailand,
right.
And you had some journalism experience, but then things got bad for you. There was a toxic environment, and you decided to take a digital marketing role with a new company, a company that you would stay with for at least a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me how you felt taking a digital marketing role that was adjacent to journalism?
It was not ideal. It was a decision I took in order to make sure that one of my two goals in life was achieved, which was to remain an expat. After my work in Oman, I'd have to go back to the UK and spent there 9 months basically on unemployment, and it was an incredibly depressive period of my life. So I didn't want to repeat that. I did everything I could to avoid that, and unfortunately, included taking a job that didn't really feed into my passions.
You moved to Phuket to take this job, and you stayed there for 4 years until you decided to relocate to Bangkok, where your managers were.
It wasn't really my decision, if I'm really honest.
Okay.
I mean, I was given the choice, obviously, but they said, we'd like you to move up to Bangkok, and I said yes, Because again, it was a change. I mean, life in Phuket wasn't going 100% perfect, so I decided to move and hope that change would cheer things up.
And just to let my audience know that you were in your mid-20s at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to Bangkok
Yes.
and you get pulled into a meeting with your managers. They give you a warning. Can you describe to us what this was all about?
They didn't feel like they were getting the best out of me. They didn't feel like they were getting their potential out of me. In actual fact, they said at one point that they felt like they'd made a mistake in hiring me. I wasn't living up to the promise of my resume, and it was creating an unpleasant environment. My being unhappy in the work that I was doing was making the people around me unhappy. So I was creating a bad environment for them, which I obviously didn't want to do.
How much do you think that had to do with the fact that you weren't pursuing journalism?
Probably quite a substantial amount, to be honest. Yeah, that's been kind of a passion for me, and having to do adjacent things. I mean, it was similar, but it wasn't the same thing. That probably had an aspect to it, yeah.
So when you went into this meeting, were you shocked?
I was initially, yeah. Was not expecting that one, but it was definitely kind of a kick up the bum.
Tell us more. What happened? How did your attitude change? How did your work ethic change as a result of this meeting?
Pretty much a complete 180. Within 6 months, I got a massive pay rise, and I actually remember saying to my boss that I didn't feel like I deserved it because most of the year had been bad. But he said that the upturn in the last quarter or so had been so significant that it was justified.
So that's wonderful. So you go to Bangkok, you have this meeting, and then you pick it up, you change your game, you really pick up your game. And you told me before that the next 3 years, you get pay raises, you get even a promotion, and you're building this rapport with your small, tight-knit team. Mm-hmm. You said it felt like they were family. Is that right?
When I first joined the company, the other members of the team had said that they felt like a family together. It was about 20 of them or so that were kind of working on this one project. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, you guys must have some really dysfunctional families, because I did not feel it. Obviously, I was feeling very unhappy, I suppose, at the time.
This is at the beginning of your journey with this new company that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Then when I moved up to Bangkok and I got to know them better and they got to know me better, and thank God to them for the effort they put in to get to know me despite that rough start. Yes, they absolutely did feel like a family.
Everything's going well for 3 years. Mm-hmm. You're building this rapport, you're getting a promotion, you're getting salary raise, and it's wonderful. But then in 2023, there's an event that happens. You told me that your team got combined with another team in London.
Correct.
Can you please describe in some detail, how did this change impact you psychologically?
Really quite significantly so. So initially, myself and one of my colleagues who were kind of senior within our team were brought into a meeting with the people who had been our managers for the 3 or 4 years. And they said, they warned us this change was coming and asked us to be strong for the rest of the team, asked us to help guide them through it. So I had a lot of trust in these people, and unbeknownst to them, what they were telling us, in my opinion, unbeknownst to them at least, what they were telling us wasn't entirely true. They were saying that not much was going to change. In the end, the entire team structure got changed. Everyone got spread out among different teams. We stopped communicating on a regular basis. We stopped doing the same kind of roles. A lot of us stopped doing roles that we were good at. So the stuff that we'd been trained on, the stuff that we'd been doing for years, the stuff we'd had massive success at.
Okay, so the environment really changes here.
Completely.
And how does that impact you psychologically?
It's traumatizing, frankly. I mean, that's probably over-egging it. That's probably a massively strong word for what it was. But it was like, I suppose, my parents divorced when I was 5 years old. It was like the same thing. All my family had suddenly gone, and I wasn't talking to them again. And this was something that happened to me when I was a kid. And it's the same thing, just in a different environment.
It must have been difficult.
It was. Not helped by the fact that my new stepmom, my new manager, was not using my talents to the best of their abilities. Let's put it that way.
So you started noticing that other people, like your manager who had been in the company for 20 years, mm-hmm. quit. And some others were quitting at that time.
Several people quit, yeah, but almost immediately. And then others trickled out over the next year or two.
But you didn't quit. You didn't let go of your job at this time, even though you were sensing this trauma that you described. Why didn't you let go at that point?
It's kind of twofold. Firstly, this was the one of my two life goals that I still had a cling on, had a grip on. And I didn't want to let that go. Because if my somewhat naive understanding at the time, even though it was only a few years ago, was that without the job, I would lose the work permit. Without the work permit, I'd lose the visa. Without the visa, I'd lose being an expat. And I'd have to go back to the UK and spend 9 months unemployed while I tried desperately to look for another overseas position again. Didn't want to go through that.
Okay, so these are your two life goals. You want to be an expat and you want to do journalism.
Correct.
And that is why you didn't let go of the job at that time?
Yeah, because it was not really journalism. It had never been journalism, but it was at least adjacent. So I was initially, before this reorganization, still using some of those skills. Like I still got to go out and research stuff. I still got to write stuff. It was becoming less and less frequent, but it was still an aspect of it. But more importantly, I was still an expat. I was still living overseas. I was still living this exciting, exotic life, even though it wasn't that exciting anymore. But
at that point, didn't you think about maybe being an expat somewhere else?
That would have been an obvious option, but also the second aspect to why I didn't quit immediately is the kind of sunken cost fallacy of the amount of work I'd committed to this particular project. It had been massively successful, and it wasn't obviously, it was a team effort, a lot of people were involved in it, that whole 20 people that I mentioned earlier, but some fairly significant aspects of it were predominantly done by me. Again, with support, with help. I'm not saying I did this all alone. I'm not some kind of hero, but I'd put a lot of effort into this. I put a lot of myself into this. I mentioned earlier a second ago that it had become less exciting. I'd overcommitted myself to my work. I put far too much of myself into it to the point that my outside of work life kind of withered a little bit from what it had been previously.
Was your main focus at this point your work?
Pretty much, yeah. Almost my entire focus, yeah.
Okay, so you poured all your energy. It's safe to say, poured a lot of your energy into this workplace.
90% of it easily, yeah.
Yes. And again, it's like you're 7 years into this company now. And for the past 3 years, you were heavily investing into this company. So it's understandable why you felt you didn't want to let go at that point because you had put in so much energy and time. But then there's also the fear. You told me earlier you felt like you never had a choice. Can you elaborate on that?
I suppose the alternatives were so bad that, or seemed so bad in my head at least, I should say, that, it felt sort of like I was stuck there. Like all I saw of my career ahead of me was just this endless road of tedium and a gradual descent into insanity. And I didn't see any kind of turn-offs. Like, again, I'd committed so much into this. It was my one life goal that I'd achieved. So the alternatives just seemed so bad that, I suppose I functionally didn't have a choice.
Ben, I want to talk a little bit about the role of fear, the role that fear played in you not being able to let go of that job. Can you elaborate on that, the kind of fear you were feeling?
Paralyzing. Most days I came home from work and doom scroll until God knows when, and then that was my entire life. I would eat junk food, go to sleep stupidly late, wake up the next day, not much time before my start times. So in fact, quite a lot of times I was quite late to work, and rinse and repeat day in, day out. And my weekends were pretty much the same. It was just crippled by this concept of having no alternatives, having nowhere to go. I was hopeless. That's the right word for it.
And this went on for how long?
About 3 years, 3.5.
3.5. So you said you were hopeless, but yet you still stayed.
I couldn't tell you why. I mean, no one said fear was rational, but like I said, I didn't feel like I had an alternative. Even though, like, logically speaking, I absolutely did, but I had sunk so much into this. I didn't feel like I had the option to go back to journalism as well, was the big part of the problem. Because I had been in this company now for 10 years, it felt like that's too big of a gap in your CV. It's like, doing a journalism degree, a couple of years in Oman, a couple of years doing the journalism here in Thailand, and then this 10-year gap. Who's going to hire someone who's like pushing 40 and hasn't worked in journalism for 10 years? That was my attitude. That was my mindset. So I didn't want another job doing the same stuff. I didn't want to jump ship to a different company doing the same kind of SEO marketing, digital marketing, because it would be the same problem. It's like jumping out the frying pan into the fire, because at least here in this frying pan, I know, the bacon and the eggs. Like I know the other people around me, and I've got that faint element of a support structure in terms of my friends and colleagues.
Did it ever occur to you to quit?
Not initially, no. That didn't even occur to me at all, no. Like I said, I had this mental image of this road ahead of me and of my life just going nowhere, and the thought never occurred to me. I suppose, again, because the fear of what that would bring, the reminder of what happened when I left my last job and stuff like that, it was so unpleasant that it didn't strike me as an option.
And you told me that just last year, in 2025, in March, you went to a workshop in London for a week.
Correct, yes.
And you had several nervous breakdowns, and you weren't feeling well. The signs were there, but yet you still didn't let go. And now this is getting closer to 10 years of working with this company, almost 10 years. With all these signs in front of you, why didn't your attitude change?
That's a really good question in hindsight. At the time, it just never occurred to me. I don't know if that was, again, the sunken cost fallacy, or if it was just trapped in my own head, trapped in my own thoughts, in circular thoughts going round and round circles in my own head. It just never occurred to me. This 3-year period of the kind of new organization, the new management, had absolutely annihilated my self-confidence. It had gone from probably the highest it's ever been in my life, the massive success of the project we were working on, down to I don't want to explicitly blame my manager for this. I don't necessarily believe that it was something done intentionally, or at least I have no evidence to prove that it was, which means I can't make that accusation. But it was routinely ground down by changing the methods that we'd been using successfully, and being tasked with such basic tasks compared to what I'd been doing before, and having such massive oversight and constant correction and stuff like that. I have no problem being corrected if I'm wrong, but what we were doing was working perfectly, and suddenly it wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. And it reached the point where, like you were saying, why didn't I look for another job? Why didn't I quit? Because I didn't have the confidence to send out my CV. Mm-hmm. Because as far as I was concerned, I was a failure. Because the only evidence I had to suggest that I wasn't was now 3 years old.
So would you say a lot of your self-esteem was tied to external validation then?
Oh, 100%. It always has been, to be honest. Like, that's not something particularly healthy, but I'm fully aware of that as a flaw in my psyche.
Okay, so jumping back to your story. Mm-hmm. So you go to this workshop in London, you have all these signs, but still you're not in the mind state to recognize that what is happening to me, or you're not thinking about it, correct?
Correct.
2 months later, in May 2025, an incident happened which ended up leading you to quit your job with this company after almost 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years. Can you describe to my audience what happened?
So I give blood quite regularly, or I used to do at least. I have a O-negative blood type, which is a universal donor, so it feels like almost a duty. Like, it's such a valuable resource that I produce infinitely, so why the hell not? And the Thai Red Cross used to bring a bus to the building where I worked on a regular basis, so I used to donate there. So I came downstairs from the office after a particularly troublesome period. I think it had been some nasty emails or something in that morning, and went to try and donate my blood. And they took my pulse, and they took my blood pressure, and they discovered that my blood pressure was ridiculously high. It was 168 over 106 or something like that.
I have it as 162 over 108.
That was close. Yeah, 162 over 108.
That's really high.
That's incredibly high, yes.
Because normally it should be 120 over 80.
Correct. That's generally considered a healthy blood pressure, and mine was significantly over it. They discovered that the reason for that reading was that my heart had started beating irregularly. I was missing beats.
How did you feel at that point when you found that out?
Terrified, like shocked. I realized then at that point that this job was literally putting my life in peril. I might genuinely die if I continue working in this job. And that's the first time I've been that close to death in my entire life. I've never really had any significant health problems. And suddenly the most fundamental organ in your body is not working right.
Scary. And how old were you at this point?
I would have been same age I am. No, just a year younger, so I've been 37.
37 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do then?
Quit.
Yeah.
I thought about it over the weekend because I think this was on a Thursday or something like that. And then I did. I sent in my notice and decided that literally anything was better than this.
And then a month later, after your 1 month notice, you were done with this job.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, how did it feel to finally let go of this job?
That 1 month notice period was probably the happiest I'd been in like 3 or 4 years. Yeah. A lot of people immediately noticed the change in my attitude and my mood. It suddenly shot significantly up. I was suddenly carefree, and there was not that sort of crushing inevitability of a horrible life ahead of me.
Were you worried about your future at that point?
Because
that is one of the reasons why you wouldn't let go of your job, because of the fear. But then your health issue was enough to be letting this job go. So what happened to the fear?
It was still there, still is, but the fear of death was greater. Like the very, very real possibility that my heart might just, explode or stop or something, was significantly greater than the risk of being unemployed for a bit.
Now, when you look back and you think about the fear you were feeling, if you quit your job, was it really as bad in reality when you actually quit?
Yeah, no, it wasn't as bad as I expected. But again, it was more the fact that it was the lesser of two evils. Like I was less afraid of being unemployed and being, without income and stuff like this for a protracted period of time than I was about dying. So it wasn't so much that the fear went away or the fear wasn't there. It was just I was so happy to not be dying anymore that it stopped worrying me quite so much.
In hindsight, Ben, what would you tell your former self that you would do differently?
I think a part of why I stayed at the company was also just these people were my family and I wanted to help them. And I knew some of them were having difficult times. And I obviously wanted to continue this project succeeding because we'd invested so much time and effort into it. But I wasn't thinking about myself. I wasn't thinking about my own health, my own well-being. It was like think about yourself a bit more. I think would be the message.
That's a great message. So many people think, from what I've seen, that if you take care of yourself first, it's very selfish. But how are you supposed to take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself?
Yeah. I've heard that said. I think Brené Brown said it. The first priority is looking after yourself because you can't donate money if you have no money to donate, for example.
Like you can't donate blood.
Exactly. If you have no blood.
Exactly.
But yeah, the same goes for time and energy and all that sort of thing. If you don't have it yourself, you can't share it with someone else.
Yeah, it's a great lesson. Regrets. Do you ever regret not leaving sooner for the sake of your own mental health?
Absolutely. I have quite a significant hill to climb to get back to the highlands where I was before. And a lot of that descent was unnecessary. It could have been truncated by just leaving earlier, by seeing the writing on the wall when it was there to be read.
Is there a lesson or lessons that you have learned from this whole experience that you will carry forward in your own life?
The obvious one is, quit while you're winning. Don't stick with a situation. Don't cling on to a sinking ship just because it's what you're used to. Change can be terrifying. The change 3.5 years ago was scary when it was coming, and the results of it were obviously terrifying. But change can also be good. Like, change should have come earlier for me to prevent it getting to that kind of situation.
And how are you doing today?
I'm gradually trickling back into journalism, which is giving me some sort of sense of achievement, I suppose, and sense of self. I am very gradually rebuilding my confidence, but it's taking a while. There is now obviously the ticking time bomb of what happens when I run out of savings and my income dries up. But I suppose I just have to hope that my misfortune runs out before my money does.
And you'd rather be in this situation than back in that company right now?
Oh, absolutely. So a worthwhile thing to mention is that less than a month after my last day at the company, the entire rest of my team got made redundant, predominantly replaced by AI, I think, but I don't know exactly the full details. Because all of us have worked for the company for at least 10 years. I think I was one of the newest joiners of the company, of the team, sorry. Everyone got a massive payout thanks to Thai's labour laws being very generous in terms of being made redundant. I didn't because I quit of my own accord. I still don't regret that decision. Sure, I missed out on what could have been like 500,000 baht or something like that, probably more than that. But I still don't regret that decision at all. Like, I will happily take that extra month of being unemployed than the extra money, because the sense of well-being that I got from that month of notice and the cessation of the decline, like the stop of the downward spiral, has just made such a huge significant difference. It's really not as terrifying when you do let go as you may think it is. Like, the fear in your head or your mental image of what could happen is always going to be orders of magnitude worse than reality. The attitude I've often had throughout life is sort of hope for the best, plan for the worst. But the problem with planning for the worst is it puts that idea of what could happen into your head. So even if it's ridiculously absurd, like I quit my job and suddenly I'm eaten by alligators or something, like that's clearly never going to happen. The odds of that happening are so minuscule that it's barely even worth considering, let alone preparing for. So remember, I suppose, that it's very rarely going to be as bad as you think it's going to be.
Letting go of a job you've poured your heart and soul into can be incredibly hard. But if it's making you depressed, leaving you unfulfilled, or affecting your overall well-being, is it really worth doing? For Ben, the stress on his heart was the straw that broke the camel's back. I can imagine how difficult it must be to leave a job and step into uncertainty, as Ben did. But isn't it also an opportunity to try something new? If you're wrestling with the idea of quitting, there are some questions worth asking. Will it really be as bad as you imagine if you change directions? Is the risk worth it for your own well-being? And how is staying in this job affecting other parts of your life, your relationships, your energy, and your overall happiness? Thanks so much for your attention and time. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting us on Patreon or buying us a Thai milk tea. You can visit the X Perspective podcast website for more information. There are also links in the description section. Your support helps us keep sharing meaningful stories. And please don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified whenever a new episode drops. Ever get to the end of the month and wonder where all your money went? Well, now there's a free app called Enough Spent. You open it, type what you spent, and you're done. Your coffee won't even get cold. It works in over 150 currencies, which is great if you're traveling, and it works offline too. No account needed, no sign up. If you've ever wanted to track your spending without dealing with some complicated finance app, search for Enough Spent on Google Play. Thanks again for being here, and remember, every perspective creates a story. See you in episode 22.